You know, some of you remember when that happened, and you know, there are only two people that actually understand it, and they can never fly on the same airplane together, right? Because if they go down together, no one will understand it anymore. And it's very, very confusing. It's been patched every 2 years as our legislature has looked at it. So I think the principles that matter are going to be, number one, that redistribution of wealth is a fundamentally unfair and unconstitutional way for us to deal with school finance. So that's number one. You know, so Robin Hood can't stay. It can't be Robin Hood. We have to be able to keep our property taxes local for our schools. And I think that's at the center of what I want to see. The other part, I think, is that we have to go back and look at what education is about. Before we start talking dollars and cents, we have to remember, what are we trying to do? And that's something I want to bring to the discussion as a teacher. Education is about student achievement. That's why we have it, student achievement. So however we're going to be spending the money, we've got to look and make sure that's what we're accomplishing. Student achievement. That means we've got to be supporting teachers. They're the ones who move student achievement. And we've got to get the dollars to the classroom. So that's the centerpiece for me, making sure that we're actually spending the dollars where we need to. And we can't continue with recapture, which is redistribution of wealth.
Well, excuse me, property taxes and the increase in property taxes is a serious issue. As you know, property assessed valuations go up anywhere from 6 to 12% a year. That makes your overall taxes go up that amount each year. Local governments don't necessarily raise the tax rate, they lower the tax rate, but it's our assessed valuations that continue to increase. Your total property taxes vary between 2.25%, 2.25%, and 2.8%. School taxes run $1.06. There's two components to a school tax. $1.06 for maintenance and operation, and then a debt service component. The debt service component varies between each district. Each district sells their own bonds and then raises that tax based on the amount of bonds that they continue to sell. And then there's a state puts a cap on the total amount of the tax, which is around $1.60. Of the 2.5% total tax, it is around 65, 75% of your total property tax. It is a significant issue. How we look, Plano sent out of states, Plano turned into the state $140 million last year. $140 million of your taxpayer money went someplace else. We've got to stop the whole redistribution of wealth that occurs because of Robin Hood. Robin Hood was enacted in about 1992. It is a broken system, and the reason we have it is because the Supreme Court ruled, the Texas Supreme Court, the schools have to be equally funded, that it has to be an equal education across the state. And part of that process, the Supreme Court ruled, was through funding mechanism. And as each district continues to get wealthier or higher assessed valuations, more and more money is shipped out of that district into other areas of the state. Now, how are you going to make up that revenue? Well, there's several theories on that, and several ideas have been floating around. TPPF has an idea that if you take the $1.06, which is consistent throughout the state, which is the maintenance and operations, and we substitute a consumption tax for that $1.06, leave the debt service component alone and allow each district to take care of their debt service component, and then we can have lower property taxes by $1.06 to the 2.5%. So basically we'd be lowering property taxes 50%. In order to accomplish that, the sales tax, that's a sales tax, consumption tax, the base of sales tax would have to increase. Is this getting too many in the weeds here? I'm sorry, everybody's kind of nodding there. Looking. The bottom line is, I won't get into the weeds, but the bottom line is that we can solve the problem. The governor just in the special session had this as a big issue. So he's just appointed 3 House members and 3 senators to look at school funding. And it's going to be done from a zero-based budgeting standpoint. The senators met yesterday on this. Paul Bittencourt is one of the senators. And zero-based budgeting means we have to look at how do we solve the problem, starting with how do we interpret what is exactly I got a red light. Anyway, how do we solve? So I have confidence that the commission is going to have some great ideas on how to solve the problem. I'm going to go to Austin and really work on this problem because it is not equitable to be taking money out of Collin County schools and sending it elsewhere.
Thank you. Philip, I wouldn't be worried about doing the math in this group. I think these folks should handle the math.
Sorry, I got it.
My question, once again, no disrespect to our judges here. It's very important what they do, but this question is, again, for Angela and Philip. In light of the fact that we have one of our city councilmen over here, Mr. Rick Grady, we appreciate you being here, Mr. Grady. Now that wolf in sheep's clothing, Joe Strauss, is not going to be in the Senate again, or House anymore. One of the key legislation items that Mr. Van Taylor was the champion for in the Senate was the requirement for city councils to put before a referendum and a vote when the tax rate exceeded over a certain amount. Now, what do you think the chances are? Was I clear on that? If I wasn't, man can tell you all about it because he knows all about it. But the long and the short of it is, there was a rule that was put before the state senate that if the property taxes at a city level went over a certain level, that the city council was required to have a public referendum to confirm that rate. Now, the question I have for you two is, now that Strauss is gone, I hope that's going to come right back. What do you think the chances are of getting that through? And how would you go about doing it?
Do you want to go first? Or I don't mind going first. I already have the microphone. Well, first of all, on your mention of Joe Strauss, I don't think he was a wolf in sheep's clothing. I think he was a wolf in wolf's clothing, actually. So, but you know what? I think that we have great opportunity now that Strauss is not going to be the speaker. Depends on who we get, but we have great opportunity to make lots of headway on lots of things that got blocked because of the speaker. So that's a good thing, and that bill is one of them. And to me, that's a very simple thing. The taxpayers should always have the final word on whether their taxes are being raised. So
wait a second. This is right there without Speaker Strauss. There are a lot of opportunities and a lot of good legislation is going to get passed. And I can tell you that the Lieutenant Governor's bill was a 4% cap, and then during the special session it was argued back and forth, and then the House finally agreed to 5 or 6%, and the Senate wouldn't go along, so it stayed. So the bill never passed on the cap. I think, and a lot of the local officials and government officials from local communities came down and testified that they need local control, and that the state shouldn't be involved in putting a cap on the increase in property taxes. Well, to me, local control means giving it to the voters and letting the voters decide if they want an increase in taxes. To answer to your question, Governor Abbott just came out of a plan for 2.5% property tax cap and to fund unfunded mandates that the state may place on local governments. I'm 100% behind that. I think 2.5% is plenty of an increase in property taxes of any kind.
Candidates again, but I hate to be a broken record, but this one goes back to the Senate 8 candidates as well. So with regard to, I wish you a lot of success in the school reform financing, because I think that's very important. But maybe as an interim step, my understanding is there's some blocking issue at the state legislature that doesn't allow that visibility of that $140 million to be on our tax statements. So I guess the question would be, would you support allowing the local tax jurisdictions to break out that section that's part of the recapture so that when we're all sitting around going, oh, my taxes have gone up, we can see how much of that recapture is actually going back to the state? Because otherwise you don't really see that unless you dig into it. So would you support that?
Yeah, thank you, Senator.
I actually carried that bill last session. We got it out of the Senate, and who knew it died in the House. But But there is nothing to stop the school district from communicating with voters, with taxpayers, anything they want to
But they
about
can
how.
put it on their statement, though, or that was the thing.
Not on the statement, but they can send a separate letter. There's nothing to stop them. But putting it on the statement was legislation that actually passed out of the Senate that I carried last session.
So would you guys support that?
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
I support the most conservative senator in the Texas Senate.
Okay, at the risk of being redundant again, for the Senate candidates. Similar to Matt's question, but with a little bit of a different tilt. Mr. Strauss is not rerunning for office, but he has left behind a clique of cohorts. And we are the largest red state in America, and we're operating like a liberal Democrat state. What will either of you do, and how will you caucus to prevent the Strauss legacy from being continued after you're in office?
Well, let me address, I'm running for the state Senate. And what your question refers to is the House of Representatives. So I'm not going to be involved in the election of the Speaker, in the caucus, and how that's going to occur. So I really can't answer that question, but I can tell you this, that I'm 100% for getting rid of his cliques and making sure, I don't know if everybody knows this, but more Democrats got legislation passed under Strauss administration than any Republican, because he was elected by Democrats, and he made sure that their legislation passed. And so that reigns come to an end is the great day for Texas.
Can I just add on to that?
Go ahead, please.
You know, it is a beautiful thing. And one of the things that's so important about the Speaker that the House will choose is that the Speaker is incredibly powerful. The Speaker selects all of the committee chairs, and the structure that is in place because of the Speaker is hard to crack. So it's very, very important that we are able to elect a new Speaker. A lot of the cliques get broken up because of that. And I'm really happy for our House delegation. You know, we have the most amazing House delegation. Freedom Caucus members, Prayer Caucus chair, right? In Collin County. And those guys have been bleeding, fighting for the conservative cause. And so I am so thankful for them that they're going to have a little bit more of an open door, a lot more opportunity to make good things happen. And I'm excited about partnering with them in the Senate to make sure that things don't die in the Senate. They happen in the House, they happen in the Senate, and we get good conservative legislation.
I have one question. I know this is a very representative question. It's from Asian American community. The next question is about affirmative action. Affirmative action. Okay. Affirmative action is being abused in college admission. Data shows that to gain admission to college, Asian Americans students had to score hundreds of points higher than those from other ethnic groups. The abuse of affirmative action has been hurting young students across the board. This question is for everybody. The question is, what's your opinion in this abuse of affirmative action? It's for everyone. Open discussion.
I'll start. It's wrong.
Maybe we can go from there to here.
So you already know I'm an immigrant as well, and I've dealt with that personally on a personal level. So when I came here, I didn't get any handouts. I didn't get anything special. And in fact, I think I suffered for it for a little bit because I didn't have certain qualities that other people might have gotten. Now, I did well. I tried hard, and I did as well as I could, and I think I'm quite successful at it, as I'm sure many of y'all are, and your children and grandchildren are as well. But it is wrong to think that somebody has to score higher or do more or do extra merely because they come from a different place or they look a different way. Somebody getting an advantage because they look a different way or because they come from a certain place is just wrong. And the people who do that are wrong, and they can talk to me, or I'm sure many of y'all in this room. So I am against this.
Okay.
Justice Alito put it best, said before the race blinds about the race. I mean, I believe in meritocracy.
I couldn't agree more. That is completely wrong. And I'll tell you who one of the most outspoken advocates against affirmative action has been is Justice Clarence Thomas on the U.S. Supreme Court. I have heard him speak on this. He is very eloquent on this subject. And who better to address this? And who better to say, don't judge me by my race. Judge me by my merits. So...
I think that we've come to a point somehow in getting these things done that are like politically correct or trying to do things to help one party or type of people over another. It doesn't make any sense in how we rewarded a just limited amount when there are tons of people, especially I heard a speaker speak at one of the Republican Club meetings that actually spoke to how many of the Asian population are actually hurt by affirmative action because of that treatment, and so only a limited amount of Asians or a limited amount of African Americans, whatever the case may be, just to move things up and down a ladder doesn't make any sense. We should be rewarding who works hard, who does the work, and that's the problem. Is we've moved into a society that so wants to not reward the merit and the hard work. But I mean, that's where we need to get back to our getting into Washington and getting conservatives there, because it's shameful that the reason these ideas come about is because those Democrats are ending up in very, very concentrated government areas, right? We complain about Austin being really liberal. That's terrible. We're a red state. We talk about Washington D.C. being the same way. Those are things that we need to work hard as conservatives to fight against. And I think it's more important that we as minorities also, but also the general population as Republicans, we need to move forward movements that are getting rid of ideas such as, okay, only a certain amount of this and only a certain amount of that based on your race. It's racist. We're still looking at color.
Yep.
We're still looking at color. We're not looking at merit.
Yep. Angela?
Yep. You know, we just had Martin Luther King Day, and Martin Luther King's wonderful speech, I have a dream, is about a time in this country where people are not judged on the color of their skin, but on the content of their character and of their work ethic. And that is the American dream. And it's time for us to have the American dream. And it's not based on race. It is based on the content of our character and a willingness to work hard and achieve.
The Asian community and the Republican Party have the same values. It's being successful through hard work and education. It's actually reaching one's highest potential, living the American dream. And that's what my campaign is about, and that's what I want to focus on. If I'm elected your next state senator, I'm excited about the possibility of introducing legislation that makes it illegal for discrimination except for admission to state universities based on merit only.
I would just add that I think what makes us Republican and everyone in this room is that we believe in a hand up, not a hand out. And I have a 6-year-old son, and that's what we teach in our home. That you have opportunity because you're here and you're going to try hard, and the rest doesn't matter. How you look, what your color of your skin is, you're going to work hard, and that's how you get the opportunity. So that's what we believe, and I think that's what we believe in Republican.
I attended public schools in Port Arthur, and it was very racially mixed, and it's a very blue-collar area. No one is better than anyone else. I'd like to reiterate what Ms. Paxton said, that I'm a follower and believe to the bottom of my soul that all of us should be judged by the content of our character and not the color of our skin or our gender. I would tell you that I have a son who scored a 1600 on the SAT. He was a National Merit Finalist. He was an Eagle Scout. He was the captain of his debate team. And he was precluded from admission to a number of universities in the country. And I will tell you, quite frankly, I think it's because that those universities felt the need to make judgments based on the race of other people's, the other people who applied. And here's a young man who I've been preaching to and teaching, do your very best and success will come. So I had the opportunity to address this issue at the Collin County Asian Republican Club, and ultimately they invited me to talk about that at their leadership and training and Toastmasters on Saturday. I feel what you are going through right now. It is wrong to discriminate against anyone based on race or gender. Thank you.
Question. Texas is a great state, right? But we still have this in college admission, such as UT Austin, okay, UT system. Okay. I'm working with UT Dallas. Okay. 7% from all the this high school graduate from your class, right? 7%. So I'm 7% this year, okay. So it is 7%. But we know Plano has a great school. Our kids work very hard, right? Our 7% is not the same as maybe the other 7%. Our 20% or our 50% can compete with the 7%, but our kids have less chance to get automatically admitted to UT Austin. This is unfair. So it's called reciprocal discrimination, right? Actually, there's some case, suit in United States Supreme Court. Okay. UT Austin student suit, UT and whatever. But I would like to ask you to running for state senate. Your opinion? What are you going to do? To do about this? This is about race. It's about everything. Actually, it's so because this is important to Plano. A lot of Asian community or a lot of conservative families, our kids work really hard, but we get this chance. So, Angela and please.
Well, and I think this is very much like the last question, but it is reverse discrimination, and when you have to identify your race as part of an application that should just be about merit, that's wrong. And I think it should be illegal for Texas universities to do that. That's what we control as Texas. Now, it ought to be illegal everywhere because it's racial discrimination. And so I would support legislation and carry legislation to the extent that we're able to do that in Texas. Now, is Van still here? I'm guessing this is more of a federal purview. But in the state, okay, then absolutely for Texas universities, I would absolutely support and carry legislation to outlaw racial discrimination, reverse discrimination. You don't have to worry about reverse discrimination if you get rid of racial discrimination altogether.
Every race is, if we look at it, every race is the same way.
Yes. Well, this should not be a box on the application for the purpose of considering admission.
And let me add, okay, in this year's college application, in the Asian, they have Asian, they have a new Asian category, okay? It's called Asian registry, whatever. Some of the colleges develop. You have to choose. Other Asian, you have to choose Chinese, Cambodia, Korea, whatever.
Right. It's under Asian. You have to even subcategorize, which creates further discrimination. Yes. Further, it is wrong and it should not be legal.
This is not.
We need to control the time. I'm sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, I agree. We certainly need legislation. The biggest issue is going to be making the universities comply, by giving us the data on the applications and making sure that they're not discriminating against anyone and it is only merit-based.
I'm going to get to a couple of short questions. First, my wife is Asian, and so my son's half, so we never knew what box to put him in. Anyway, I will also comment on one other thing. We're going to have a speaker race that's going to be very important to the success of our senator's race. And it just so happens that open carry of edged weapons is now allowed, so it should be an interesting session. Anyway, beyond that, I'm going to ask you the two senatorial questions, ones that were given to me to give to you, two very quick ones. First is, what is your thought on the texting ban? And the other one is, what are your brief thoughts on the high-speed rail projects in terms of support from the state? Thank you. Those two.
What makes you think we have brief thoughts on anything?
You'll be deemed if they aren't.
I support a private rail system if it's privately funded. And then what was the first question? I'm sorry. Texting. You know, why don't we have a law on no eating hamburgers? You know what? It's not safe to put mascara on while you're driving either. There are a lot of things it's not safe to do while you're driving. We have records that indicate that, you know, they can tell when people have been texting and there have been accidents. So, you know, I understand the intent behind wanting to do that. I find it something very difficult to actually know and prosecute on, and I have concerns that it's used in ways that are maybe not legitimate. I mean, how do you enforce it and that sort of thing? So, you know, it is the law, and I will follow the law. I think it's safe, and I think we should all not text while we're driving, okay? I would like you to all raise your hand and agree that you won't. As far as, you know, making it a law, you know, where's the hamburger law and the mascara law too? So I mean, I think it's a step too far in government regulation.
Right. Well, with regards to texting, it is an unenforceable law. I know that Representative Leach put several amendments on that bill. For instance, if you're navigating, you're looking at your map, or you're texting or looking at your map. So and I think to your point, because I know what you're after. It is not the government's role to get into our homes and to get into our cars and tell us what to do, because there are many things, as Angela just pointed out, they're just as dangerous, just as distractions, whether you're trying to control a child or whatever it may be. But it's not the government's role to tell us what to do in our vehicles with regards to texting. And your other question was?
High-speed rail.
High-speed rail. I'm in favor of high-speed rail. It's very important that we have connectivity between our major cities. And in this high-speed rail situation, there is no state funding whatsoever involved in it. It's all private funding. The Japanese are putting up $16 million of it in debt in order to export their rail system. And so I'm 100% behind it. In case you didn't know, railroads have had condemnation power since the 19th century. So it's not anything that's new in case they have to do condemned land, which I think is where you're going on that. But it is, I'm 100% for high-speed rail.
Okay, we're down to about 4 or 5 minutes, and we want to respect the church and their staff's time. So I'm going to cut it off there.
Philip and I want some more questions.
We should thank all of the candidates for being here. Thank you. Again, I want to thank the DFW PAC for bringing the food and the beverages and helping to get this, really taking a leadership role in getting this, putting this event together. So, Frank. And finally, which are the words you're waiting on, and finally, thanks to all of you for coming. Please get out and vote, talk to these candidates, make a difference here in Plano. Thank you. Thank you.
I didn't know that. So that's kind of interesting.
With what?
The Edgeworth.
Yeah, I was
school
telling you
board.
that Edgeworth is the
Yes,
school, the
that's
Robin
right,
Hood
yeah.
case, and we can thank Cornyn for that opinion, but nonetheless, yeah, that's right, that's right.
And that's my concern.
I'm glad you didn't say that though.
No,
Just remember
no,
me.
no, no.
It was a 5-4, right?
I'm the school board
It was
official.
5-4.
I think it was, yeah. And,
But they,
but anyway, you don't know me. I don't take myself seriously at all. I took myself. I mean, I did my job, but lawyers come. I mean, First off, Bill Werski was actually one of the misdemeanor division chiefs when I was on the bench.
Okay,
Here's a rule: do not leave me alone with a lawyer who's been licensed less than a year in a courtroom. Weird things happen when you have baby lawyers, okay? Do not leave me alone with a lawyer that doesn't know what they're doing.
Oh, okay. Well, just mentor them.
Right, I did. Well, I did my best. Well, that was another conversation. The DA came down and said, "Hey, you need to teach my lawyer." And I said to him, "Hey, they don't pay me